You were never meant to shrink yourself for anyone. And that is exactly why they are triggered. There is something unsettling happening around you, and you've probably felt it for a while now. The moment you stopped pretending, the moment you stopped lowering your voice, dimming your light, or simplifying your thoughts just to make others comfortable, things changed. People didn't always say it directly, but their energy shifted. Their reactions became sharper. Their distance became clearer. And you started wondering if maybe something is wrong with you. But deep inside, you already know the truth. It's not that you became too much. It's that you stopped being less. There is a reason your presence feels heavy to some people. A reason your silence makes others uncomfortable. A reason your confidence gets mistaken for arrogance and your clarity gets labeled as attitude. You didn't change into a different person overnight. You simply stopped editing yourself to fit into rooms that were never aligned with your spirit in the first place. And that shift, it is what's triggering them. Because when you refuse to dumb yourself down, you unintentionally expose the people who are still hiding from who they really are. Your growth becomes a mirror they didn't ask to look into. Your discipline reminds them of their excuses. Your awareness challenges the comfort they built their life around. And instead of confronting themselves, they project that discomfort onto you. You were not sent here to be digestible. You were not created to make small minds feel safe. And yet, the world quietly trains you to do exactly that. Lower your truth, soften your voice, water down your ideas, just so others don't feel intimidated. But something inside you refuses. Something in your spirit resists every attempt to be minimized. That resistance is not rebellion. It is alignment. And here is where it gets deeper, because this is not just social. This is spiritual. There is a weight to your awareness that you didn't manufacture. There is a depth to your thinking that you didn't force, and there is a reason. You've always felt different, even when you tried so hard to fit in. You are not simply too intense for people. You are revealing levels in them they are not ready to face. And when someone is not ready for truth, they will call it too much. When someone is not ready for light, they will call it blinding. When someone is not ready for growth, they will call it unnecessary. But you are still standing in your truth. And the more you stand in it, the more you notice the shift. Conversations feel different. Friendships feel tested. Even silence feels loud around certain people. It's as if your authenticity has become a pressure they can't quite explain, not because you are attacking them, but because your existence is no longer performing for their comfort. And that is where the real tension begins, because chosen ones are not always rejected for what they do, but for what they reflect. You don't even have to speak sometimes. Your life alone says things others are not ready to hear. And instead of growing with you, many will resist you, not because you are wrong, but because you are real. And this is where everything starts to feel heavier, more confusing, almost spiritual in nature. Like there is an invisible force reacting to your evolution, pushing back against your expansion, trying to make you question whether you should shrink again, just to restore peace. But what they don't realize is why this is happening to you. It's not your confidence they hate. It's your refusal to lower it. What most people will never admit out loud is that your presence doesn't just inspire them, it exposes them. And exposure is uncomfortable for anyone who is not living in alignment with their own potential. So instead of asking themselves hard questions, they look for something easier to blame, and that something is you. It's easier for someone to say, "You've changed," than to admit, "I've stayed the same." Because when you are chosen to grow, evolve, and awaken to your own depth, you naturally start leaving behind environments that operate on limitation. You start speaking differently, thinking differently, moving differently, and suddenly, the same people who once felt comfortable around you begin to feel displaced in your presence. Not because you are doing anything wrong, but because you are no longer playing small enough for their comfort. And that is where jealousy quietly enters the picture. Jealousy doesn't always look like anger. Sometimes it looks like sarcasm. Sometimes it looks like silence, distance, avoidance, or subtle criticism disguised as concern. But at its core, jealousy is just a reaction to unfulfilled potential being mirrored back to someone who chose not to act on it. When they see you refusing to dumb yourself down, they are forced to confront a version of themselves they abandoned long ago. The version that once had dreams. The version that once had ambition. The version that once believed they could rise to. And instead of feeling inspired, they feel exposed. So what happens next is projection. They start attributing their discomfort to you. They call you too much, too intense, too serious, too different. But what they are really saying is, "I am uncomfortable because you are reminding me of what I ignored within myself." And this is the hidden weight chosen ones carry without even realizing it. You are not just being observed. You are being interpreted through the lens of someone else's insecurity. Your confidence becomes arrogance in their eyes. Your clarity becomes aggression. Your boundaries become coldness. Your authenticity becomes a threat. But none of that is actually about you. It is about what you awaken in them. Because, deep down, people know when someone is operating from truth. They feel it before they understand it. And truth has a way of unsettling environments built on comfort, denial, or self-limitation. So instead of sitting with that discomfort, many will try to push you back into the version of yourself that required less reflection from them. They miss the smaller version of you, not because it was more real, but because it was easier for them to manage. But here is what you must understand. You were never meant to be manageable. You were never meant to shrink your ideas, just so they could feel superior. You were never meant to lower your voice, just so they could feel heard. You were never meant to reduce your light so others wouldn't feel their shadows. And yet, every time you refused to do that, something inside them reacted. Not because you harmed them, but because you stopped agreeing to disappear. And the more you grow, the more obvious this becomes. You start noticing who celebrates your expansion and who subtly resists it, who feels inspired by your evolution and who quietly wishes you would slow down. But chosen ones are not called to slow down their truth for the sake of emotional comfort in others. That is not love. That is self-erasure. And deep within you, There has always been a resistance to self-erasure. That is why you feel misunderstood. That is why you feel out of place sometimes. That is why certain rooms feel like you have to shrink just to be accepted. But your spirit refuses to fully comply because your soul remembers something. Your environment forgot. You are not here to blend in. You are here to stand in what is real, even when it unsettles others. And that is exactly why the reactions around you are getting stronger, not weaker. But there is a deeper spiritual reason behind this reaction. You are not like them. And you were never supposed to be. There is a reason. You've always felt a little out of sync with the people around you, even when you tried your best to belong. It's not just personality. It's not just preference. It's something deeper, something spiritual. The way you think, the way you observe, the way you question things, others accept without hesitation. It sets you apart in ways that cannot always be explained, only experienced. You don't just see life at surface level. You feel beneath it. You notice patterns in people's behavior. You sense intentions before words are spoken. You question what others call normal, because something inside you refuses to accept limitation as truth. And that awareness, it changes everything, because when your mind expands, your environment starts to feel smaller. It's not that you became better than anyone else. It's that your consciousness started operating at a different frequency. You began to outgrow conversations that once entertained you. You started losing interest in spaces that thrive on repetition, gossip, or limitation. And slowly, without even announcing it, you began to detach from things that no longer matched your internal evolution. That's when isolation begins to show up. Not always physically at first, but energetically. You can be surrounded by people and still feel like you're walking a separate path. You can laugh in groups and still feel like your inner world is untouched by what's happening outside. Because deep down, you're no longer seeking validation from the same places you once did. And this is where most chosen ones get confused. They think something is wrong with them because they are not fully resonating with their surroundings. They wonder why they feel misunderstood, even when they are being accepted. But what they don't realize is that understanding requires alignment, and alignment cannot be forced. You are not here to fully fit into every system you walk into. You are here to question it, to elevate it, to see beyond it, and that level of awareness naturally creates distance. Not because you are rejecting people, but because you are being redirected. There is a kind of spiritual intelligence within you that doesn't rely on external approval to feel secure. You don't need everyone to agree with you to know what you feel is true. You don't need the crowd to validate your direction before you move, and that alone makes you different in a world where many people outsource their identity to others. This is why your energy often feels misunderstood. People interpret your independence as detachment, your depth as intensity, your silence as distance. But in reality, you are just processing life on a level they are not tuned into. And that difference can feel lonely at times, because being aware in an unaware environment creates friction. Not because you are wrong, but because awareness naturally disrupts illusion. and not everyone is ready to have their illusions challenged. So instead, they try to pull you back into familiarity. They try to make you simpler, lighter, easier to understand. But what they are really saying is, it was more comfortable when you didn't make me think this deeply. Yet something inside you refuses to regress, because once your spirit expands, it cannot fully return to confinement. Even in moments of isolation, there is a strange clarity forming within you, a quiet knowing that this separation is not punishment. It is preparation. You are being guided away from noise so you can hear direction. You are being pulled out of familiarity so you can recognize truth without interference. And the more you accept this, the less you try to force belonging in places that were never aligned with your path. You stop chasing understanding from those who were never meant to understand your level of perception. You stop shrinking just to avoid being misunderstood. And instead, you begin to observe everything from a higher awareness, one that doesn't require approval, to stand firm, because deep within, you are starting to realize something powerful, that your difference is not a flaw. It is evidence of direction. And this difference is exactly what is activating your path. What feels like rejection is actually preparation. And this is the part most people misunderstand about your journey. They assume that if you are facing resistance, criticism, or emotional distance from others, something must be going wrong. But in spiritual reality, resistance is often a sign that something within you is being strengthened, not broken, because nothing that is truly chosen is ever formed in comfort alone. There is a pattern that repeats itself in the lives of those who are being shaped for something deeper. Every level of growth comes with friction. Every expansion comes with pressure. And every calling comes with opposition that forces you to become more grounded in who you are, even when others don't understand it. So when people misjudge you, question you, or subtly push against your authenticity, it is not random. It is shaping you. It is teaching you to stand firm when approval is missing. It is teaching you to stay aligned when misunderstanding is present. It is teaching you to hold your identity without needing external agreement to validate it. Because chosen ones are not built through applause. They are built through refinement. And refinement often feels like rejection at first. You may notice that the more you grow into yourself, the more certain people distance themselves. The more honest you become, the more uncomfortable others feel. The more grounded you are. In truth, the more resistance you attract from those who are still attached to illusion. But what if that is not a setback? What if that is preparation? What if the people who cannot walk with you into your next level are not losing you, but revealing the distance between your assignment and their comfort zone? There is a divine intelligence behind what you are experiencing. Even when it feels personal, even when it feels emotional, even when it feels like confusion or loss, there is a higher shaping happening beneath it all, because growth without resistance would not build strength. And God does not just elevate chosen ones, He prepares them. That preparation often includes moments where you are misunderstood. So you stop relying on human validation. Moments where you are criticized, So you learn to anchor your worth in something deeper than opinion, moments where you are isolated. So you develop clarity that cannot be influenced by noise. It is not punishment. It is protection from becoming dependent on environments that cannot sustain your calling. And even though it can feel heavy at times, there is a quiet truth unfolding within you. You are becoming harder to manipulate, harder to distract, and harder to break. Not because life is getting easier, but because you are getting stronger. Every triggering reaction around you is revealing something important, is showing you where alignment is missing. It is showing you where your presence challenges stagnation. It is showing you where your growth is no longer compatible with old versions of connection. And instead of shrinking back into those spaces, something inside you is learning to stand still in your truth without apology. That is spiritual maturity, because at some point in your journey, you stop asking, "Why don't they understand me?" and start realizing, maybe they were never meant to. And that realization shifts everything. It removes the emotional weight from rejection. It removes the confusion from distance. It removes the need to force understanding where it does not naturally exist. And in that space of acceptance, something powerful begins to form. Clarity, direction, and quiet confidence in your path. Because what God is building in you cannot be shaped through comfort alone. It requires contrast. It requires pressure. It requires moments where you feel unseen, so that you learn to see yourself through something higher than human opinion. And slowly, you begin to understand that nothing happening to you is random. Every delay, every misunderstanding, every emotional test is part of a process you could not see in the beginning. A process that is not breaking you, but positioning you. And once you start seeing it that way, the pain begins to transform into awareness, and the confusion starts turning into purpose. Because what feels like rejection is actually preparation. But what comes next will change how you see everything. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to stand out. And the sooner you start fighting that truth, the sooner your life starts making sense in ways it never did before. Because so much of your confusion didn't come from being lost. It came from trying to force yourself into spaces that were never aligned with your spirit in the first place. There was always something different about you. Not just in the way you think, but in the way you feel life itself. You don't just move through experiences. You absorb them. You reflect on them. You learn from them deeply. And that depth is exactly what made you feel disconnected in shallow environments. But what you once saw as isolation is actually refinement. You were being shaped into someone who cannot be easily influenced by noise, pressure, or misunderstanding. Someone who doesn't abandon truth just to maintain temporary comfort. Someone who understands that self-worth is not something the world grants you. It's something you embody, and that embodiment is powerful, because when a chosen one finally stops shrinking, everything around them begins to shift. Not because they are trying to prove anything, but because they are finally standing in alignment with who they were always meant to be. You don't need to compete. You don't need to chase validation. You don't need to explain your depth to people who are not ready to understand it. Your existence already speaks. Your discipline already speaks. Your growth already speaks. And those who are meant to understand you will feel it without explanation. But here is the deeper truth you are stepping into now. Your confidence was never supposed to be negotiable. Your voice was never meant to be softened, just to avoid discomfort in others. Your light was never meant to be dimmed, just so others could feel equal without growth. You are not responsible for how your authenticity makes unhealed people feel. You are only responsible for staying aligned with your truth. And that truth is beginning to settle into you more strongly now. You are no longer the version of yourself that apologizes for existing fully. You are no longer the version that over-explains just to be accepted. You are becoming someone who understands that peace does not come from being understood by everyone. It comes from being true to yourself, regardless of misunderstanding. That is strength. That is spiritual maturity. That is chosen identity. And even though not everyone will walk with you, you are beginning to realize something important. You were never meant to walk with everyone. Some people were only meant to meet you at certain levels of your journey. Others were meant to show you what you are no longer aligned with. And a few, a very few, are meant to recognize you without you having to shrink a single part of yourself. But your focus is no longer on convincing anyone. Your focus is on becoming. Because every time you refuse to shrink, you are choosing expansion. Every time you stand in truth, you are reinforcing your alignment. Every time you stop seeking approval, you are stepping deeper into your purpose. And yes, that will continue to trigger people who are not ready to see it. But that is no longer your burden to carry. Your path is not about being universally accepted. It is about being fully expressed. So stay grounded in who you are. Stay rooted in what you know. Stay committed to your growth, even when others misunderstand it, because the very thing they once questioned in you is the thing that is now elevating you. Let them talk. Let them misunderstand. Let them project. You are not here to be reduced. You are here to rise. If you've made it this far, comment below. I refuse to shrink, so you declare this truth for yourself. And if this message resonates with your journey, don't forget to like and subscribe for more powerful reminders. For chosen ones walking their path, and now they finally understand why they were triggered.